What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. So I did a interesting little job and I wanted to share it. So the lady wanted, I'll shrink myself down here. She found this online. This is somebody's post on Instagram. And basically they kind of fabric-cobbled this thing together out of IKEA parts. And they wanted that for underneath their TV. So I did a time lapse of the whole job, so let's just get right into it. Alright, so starting off with Baltic birch. This is 1 inch I used for the outside box. This thing was massive. It was 8 feet long. I forget what are the other dimensions that was given. And that was 8 feet long though. 8 feet long, 24 inches high, and 18 inches deep, front to back. This thing was a monster. So I tried to chop out some of, like if I put the whole time lapse, it would be like a 40-minute video, but I'm basically just taking the 1 inch and I'm just ripping down and making the top panel, bottom panel, back panel, side panels, and then there's 2 panels in the middle to separate. There's 3 drawers. So that's basically what I'm doing here. And then getting some of the edge banding on while the piece of wood is vertical. It's a lot easier instead of trying to go back and do it after it's on the cabinet. So I tried to get some of it done up front. And this is where this number 7 Veritas plane shines, man. It's because it's a bevel down. I can plane plywood with it, like even Baltic birch. Can plane it down, and then when we get onto the drawer faces too, is where that thing starts to shine again. And I'll show you why when we get there. Yep, flush trim router bit time. Flush it up. Probably should have cut more of this out. And maybe I will. So the one thing with this edge banding stuff I've noticed is, like you hit it with the flush trim router bit and it just cakes the bit up after a while. It just cakes everything up. And then when you hit it with the sandpaper clogs right up. Like it doesn't take long. So you're gonna go through some sandpaper. So this is the top, this is the lid. Getting that edge banding on. I'm doing the I'm doing the face here. And I was gonna do the sides, but I just decided to wait because I was gonna stand it up on the wall. I didn't want, you know, this edge banding on the sides. If I stand it up on the concrete, I didn't want it to get damaged, so like I waited until this lid was on the unit, and then I put the 2 sides on. Alright, I think that's enough of that. So now we're making the 2 side panels and the 2 middle panels. Yeah, I just cut out for the toe kick right here. Just cut this out. Again, trying to get some of that edge banding on while I can put it in the vise. If you don't have a woodworking table with a vise, then you're not living, man. You're not living. Alright, so now we're starting to assemble the cabinet itself. Putting the side panels on. Okay, we got the side panels on. I screwed on the kicker board here, and while it's upside down, if there was any differences, I went in with the plane and just shaved everything down flat, which, like, it's crazy. I mean, I don't have a woodworking shop with like panel saws, you know, like a saw stop, $10,000 table saw. I'm doing this in the customer's house, so it's a little more tricky because I gotta drag everything in there. And then I quickly sanded all of the bottoms and just gave the edges a slight round over so that if you drag the cabinet on the floor, it doesn't like peel a ply off the plywood. And now, like I said, now that I got the top panel on the top of the cabinet where it's going, I know I'm not going to lean it against the wall no more. I'm ironing on the sides. Or iron. I'm using a heat gun. I don't carry an iron in the truck, unfortunately. Alright, now we're gluing her up. That little glue bot, man, that little bottle is so nice. You don't have to sit there and shake the bottle upside down and try to get some glue. You just grab it, squeeze it, you always have glue right down to the bottom. So I knew the whole thing was getting painted, so I wasn't too crazy with the screws. I just used they're finish screws. They're like finish nails, but screws. You know, they have small little heads on them. They're nice. And I always go and fill those holes with Bondo, not wood filler. I use Bondo. Because I don't know how many times I go back after and, you know, like the painters will use wood filler. It shrinks down a little bit and you can always see it under the paint. But if you Bondo it and sand it smooth, you're not going to see it. So this side was nice and square for me, but this side was leaning out. And I was having trouble pulling it, so I screwed a little block up underneath here because my clamp wasn't long enough to reach across, and then I pulled that side panel in square, made sure everything was parallel, and then set it. Sometimes you gotta work with what you have. Alright, so now we're throwing in a couple of dividers. And like I said, this cabinet, I've never done anything like this. There's no face frame. None. It's just drawers that slide in. So this was a little different for me. It's the first time I ever had to do something like this. So it took me a little longer than I expected. I was thinking like 3 days, but it took me 4 days. Alright. So the main cabinet is done. And now we're using 3/4 Baltic birch. And I went with staying grade on everything because it's straight, it's clean, it's nice. I didn't get this at Home Depot. I went to a plywood place and got this. It just makes your life so much easier. So I'm just rough cutting things with the skill saw, just to get it more, you know, more manageable chunks, and then I'll take them over to the table saw and we'll rip them down to their final dimensions. So because these drawers, they're actually, the box of the drawer was 16 inches. The drawers are 16 inches deep. So to use like real wood, you can only get up to a 1x12, and I would have had to take 2 panels, glue them together. It would have been a lot more time, and obviously when people are comparing things to IKEA, they don't want to spend a lot. So, and this is stronger anyway. I just put the edge banding on the tops, which you'll see in a minute. Yeah, see? Going around, putting the edge banding on. Just around the top. I use Craig screws on the inside so that you don't see any fasteners on the outside, because we're not painting these drawers. So when you slide them out, I wanted at least the outsides to look nice, and inside the drawer, like, who cares? So I always try to pre-sand the inside of the drawer before I assemble it. Because I don't know if you've ever assembled a drawer and then after had to go into all those little corners and sand everything. It's a pain. So you're better off just hitting the whole thing real quick and then assemble the whole thing. Then all you gotta do is sand the outside. Yeah, and the old Craig, man. I love that. The Craig system's great. They have a lot of nice stuff. There's the groove that I ripped in on the table saw. Used 1/4-inch plywood. Slid it into that groove for the bottom. And I don't know, I do this. I always put a spline or an extra support up the middle of my drawer, so it doesn't feel like it doesn't have that flex, or it's more robust, I guess you would call it. Then I just went across the back with some Craigs and finito. And this first drawer, the plan is to put the cable box, the Wi-Fi modem, and that kind of stuff in the bottom of the drawer so you don't see it. So I made like a lid so they could have the top. And there I am just heating up the branding iron and putting on the old stamp. The stamp of approval. Alright, so now we have the main carcass made, and we have the drawer boxes made. So now we need to make the drawer faces. And for cost, we went with poplar. And then MDF for the center panel. And usually I'll go with 1/2-inch MDF and then use the router table to bevel one side down so you have a nice thick middle. But Depot didn't have any. All they had was 1/4, so I got 1/4. And I just put some strips on the back. So now we're going to rip the groove into all of the stiles and rails. I'm going to do them all. And they're all cut a little bigger than I need them. Rip all the grooves, and then we'll go back and trim them up. And then cut the tongues. But I take the joiner and just send it over the side that I'm going to send through the router table, just to make sure there's no saw marks or anything left over. It's just nice and clean. And this little fence that I got recently. This thing is beautiful, man. I mean, I just screw it or clamp it to the table. I don't have the fancy, those tracks yet. Eventually I want to shop, and then we'll do that. So here's another nice little trick with these little hand planes that are so useful. Get your Bondo on, and don't let it harden all the way, but you see, it's hard, but it's not completely set. Way less sanding that you have to do. Way less you gotta breathe it in, so. Yeah, and in case you were wondering, it does dull the plane blade fairly quickly. So if you're afraid of sharpening, don't do that. But it doesn't get all over the plane, doesn't hurt the plane. Just might have to sharpen the blade. Alright, so now we're setting in the drawer sliders. Getting them all in. Making sure everything is flush with that face frame. These are ball bearing, soft close drawer sliders. They were pretty nice. They didn't have any hidden screws behind. Sometimes you have to pull the drawer out and then there's spots for more screws, but not with these ones. You just screw them up, push it in, you're done. Alright, so now all the drawers and the sliders are in. Oh, no. I skipped around a little bit, trying to confuse you. But right now we're gluing up the drawer faces, and inside those little grooves, inside the grooves in between the face frame and the panel, I use these little black rubber balls called space balls. You put a couple of those in all the way around, and then when you glue and clamp everything together, everything is held tight and there's no rattle in that middle panel. There's nothing more annoying than knocking on one of those panels and it's just rattling. They're cheap. You can get a bag of 100 of them for a couple bucks. So we're taking them out of the, I let them sit overnight. Sometimes I won't let them sit overnight. Sometimes I'll have other things to do. I'll let them sit for an hour, and then I'll pop them out of the clamps and just, be gentle with them and start sanding them. But these ones sat overnight. And now we're just going to come in with the sander and just knock everything down. And you'll notice too, towards the end, because I wasn't able to get 1/2-inch MDF, I threw some strips of wood. I just glued them in here so that when I nailed these drawer faces to the drawer boxes, that the middle wouldn't bow in as I nailed it. Because I like to just tack it on with a couple nails and then gently slide them out and then go from the back and get some Craig screws in. So now I am just planing off sometimes when you clamp on poplar, you'll notice little spots where the clamp pressure was. So I'm just knocking all that off. And then here's the other spot where this bevel up number 7 is awesome, because you have end grain here, then long grain. And because it's a bevel up, it just, it shears that end grain pretty easily. It's nice. And that is a Veritas. Yes, that is a Veritas. Number 7. Bevel up jointer. Very nice plane. Yep, there's the strips that I glued on. Just giving it a last little touch up. And now we put it in place and just see if, maybe we need to knock a little bit off here or a little bit off there. And there was a little bit on this top corner, so I just knocked it down so it would sit flush with the outside of the box. And now we mount them. They're finished. The IKEA-like. We're gonna put some baseboard around here, or some toe kick once it's installed. This is the drawer. We got some holes for the wires to come in. I'm gonna put the cable box and the modem under there. Then some magazines or whatever on top. Controllers and whatnot. And then 2 massive, and there's gonna be no hardware. There's a little, I left a lip on the bottom side so they can grab the drawer and pull it out. We're gonna use some of this feed and wax for the actual drawers themselves, so they can keep the logos, and everything else will be, the whole thing's gonna be sanded and painted white. Yes, I hope you enjoyed that. It was a different kind of job for me. And this plane right here, this is like the only plane that I used besides that little pocket plane. The Veritas number 7 bevel up joiner. I use this on the plywood. I use this on the drawer faces. It's bevel up so the blade's low, so it just chews through that end grain, chews through that plywood. It's a very nice plane. I really like the Lee Nielsen bevel down, because it's massive, and it cuts poplar and softer kind of woods like just so nice. Even oak or not maple, but walnut cuts it so nice. It just has such a nice feel to it. But I'm starting to like this number 7 Veritas too. And the blade is, look how thick that blade is. I mean, that is beefy. Beefy, bro. But yeah, I'm not gonna stop these hand planes, man. If you don't have some hand planes, and you want to do finish carpentry and stuff, these things are invaluable. And because of COVID, it's been tough to get things. But on Lee Nielsen's website, finally, the 45-degree frog became available. So I jumped on it. Because I would like to start using this Lee Nielsen jack plane some more. But with the 50-degree frog, the blade was a little high, and I don't know, it wasn't good for poplar or stuff I was using it on. And it's kind of a pain to keep swapping frogs around, so now I have a 50-degree frog that'll fit in any of my Lee Nielsens that are 2 inches wide. And now this one's good to go. Making shadings. So make sure you subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, leave me a comment, maybe, or not, but hopefully you liked that video. See you guys next time.